report on the council-funded agencies. First up, I'd like to welcome Kevin and Don, please, to present Safer Mid Canterbury. Welcome, team. Do you want to talk us through your report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And can I just press the button? I never could do that. Can I just book you in for a lesson in technology very soon, please?
Of course you can. Be my pleasure. We've got Kevin. Are you going to present it?
Yes.
Kevin, thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity to come along here today, and hello to the mayor, councillors and chair and staff. It's good to have the opportunity to come along. We've come here today to present our 6-month report for 1 July to 31st December 2022, and also present our business plan for the coming financial year 23-24. The first 6 months of the financial year have been quite settled for us and less disruptive due to COVID-related issues. And while, like many, we've had critical staff away over the last 6 months, it hasn't sort of been as hard to manage as it had been for the previous year. So it's been we've been able to deliver all our work. In previous years, it had been difficult to deliver some of our work when people were away for extended periods. The changing of the criteria, allowing only one person to isolate and others to come to work, meant that we still actually had staff at work when sometimes their families had COVID. So it just allowed us to deliver the service. It was quite good. Our workload has also been steadier. However, there's been some ups and downs. One of the key areas that have seen almost a doubling in work over the last year has been our attendance service. Referrals pre-COVID sat at around 80 per year that we got for young people who were not regularly attending school at some point over the course of the year. In the past year, that's gone up to 180 referrals across our district for young people with poor attendance. And when we say poor attendance, we're really talking about young people dropping below 75% of attendance at school. So missing sort of more than 1 day a week, which is, has a substantial impact on people's ability to achieve any form of qualification. Whilst attendance has been a creeping issue for the last several years, COVID appears to have had a significant impact, with many children out of school for long periods, getting behind, out of routine, and families also getting out of routine. The attendance service that we deliver, it is a contract through the Ministry of Education, went up for public tender last year. And we applied for the tender and were successful in achieving it. We now are contracted directly to deliver that service. Previously, for the last 7 years, when it last went up for tender, the government let it to 7 major contractors or organisations around the country. And those organisations basically contracted all the small outfits in every region that were doing it previously to that and district. So the funding that we received was quite meagre and poor because a big organisation clipped the ticket on the way. So now we've been contracted directly. So I'm not sure how the funding changes work, but we had $30,000 a year to work on attendance issues, which was nothing. We've now just had a increase in the contract price with the new tender, which is threefold. It's that or slightly over threefold. So that will allow us to do a reasonable amount of work and probably put more work in. We've also informed yesterday by the Ministry of Education that the government's pre-budget announcement that they're putting $74 million into attendance services could also have an impact on that contract rate going up. So we could end up with more funding again from the tender that we've just secured in the last month or two. So yeah, looking to see what happens there. It's probably the major issue in our community for young people at the moment, and of course attendance is the precursor to young people, being idle, getting in trouble, petty crime and crime starting to occur, and it's sort of downhill from there. So if we can have a good impact on that this year, that'll be great. Our Community Connection service, a service focused on providing support to people with COVID, has also been very busy in the first 6 months of the financial year. We received 148 referrals for that service over that period. Those referrals were for families that were isolating or affected, and that represents 490 individuals within those families. We also received an additional 19 referrals over that time for people around COVID who have been adversely affected, and that has to do with employment issues, financial issues, or a number of people suffering from what we call long COVID, who haven't been able to return back to work after being quite ill. We've also had a few, probably a couple of people who haven't been able to return back to work after being vaccinated as well, because they've had an adverse effect to it. So there's a couple of people like that as well. You don't see it, but there are some quite severely affected people in our community, and some of those people, probably not traditionally the vulnerable people that we've worked with, but just a cross-section of people. So yeah, it's quite an effect, and perhaps we forget about it a bit as time moves on, but there's still people who are suffering quite adversely from the effects of COVID. The previous 6 months has also seen the numbers of refugees coming to town increase, moving up toward the originally planned numbers, not there yet, but working towards it. Currently we have 49 refugees in our district, or in Ashburton Township, at December 31st. Just as an update, we did on Friday, 3 more families did arrive in the district, so there are a few more there now. We've had a couple of services seen a reduction in referrals, most notably our Youth Justice Service and our Restorative Justice Services. One of the outcomes of COVID also seems to be a reduction in general offending, and it appears in some form petty offending's gone down because people have just got out of the habit and haven't got back into it. And in saying this, we have noticed though that there has been an increase in family violence offending, which is just not unique to our district, it's across the country. So it's still a growing issue. Offending, including youth offending, has been increasing around the country recently, and people will be familiar with some of the media things that are happening in some of the areas around young people being involved in ram raids and things. However, we haven't seen that trend here yet. So now people might be familiar that we have had ram raids in Ashburton, but it has been Christchurch people driving through. We haven't had any young people living in this district be involved in that kind of offending. So we're probably in a very good place, and the best place we've been for some time in regards to offending, especially around young people getting in trouble. But of course, as said, we're very keen to work on the attendance issues because that is a precursor to those things growing again. In the previous year, Safer Mid Canterbury had also been putting money aside for the purchase of residential property. I think we talked about this at council last time, to use for social housing. Our goal was to provide short to medium term accommodation for refugee families as they come into the community. And so we've done this. Probably, I think it was near the start of the last 6 months, we did invest in our first house and we bought a 3-bedroom property. So that's now a property that has a refugee family in it, and it's hoped that in time we're looking at a second property as well, and we identified originally that we probably needed a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom to accommodate the size of families as they come in, and we can then filter them into accommodation as it becomes available. So that's something our organisation has invested in. We also thought it was quite a wise investment, rather than having our reserves just sitting in our bank, sitting there doing some good in the community, invested socially, and we're obviously gaining on that investment. So we have something we have set aside for a rainy day if we need to realise that investment at some point, if we ever have issues. And history would tell us that every several years things do get a bit tight in the non-profit sector, so we do perceive there will be a time again when things will be a little tight. Funding has also been put aside for the fit out of new office space for our organisation. Over the past few years we've outgrown our current space and are now housing some staff in alternative offices in town because we can't fit them all in the building we're in. We do have a budget of around 250,000 that we've put aside for a fit out and set up of new offices that will house around 35 staff. So that's a project that's been worked on at the moment. We are doing that in partnership with Community House, and I understand Council is probably aware that Community House is looking to secure a building. So, and that is just in the process this month of being worked on. So hopefully by the end of the month we'll have an outcome there. We've sort of, when we moved into Community House 6-7 years ago, we moved in with 12 staff, and we've now got 23 staff in that particular building, and we've got 6 staff in another site in town. So it's just a bit busy, and we really are sitting people on top of each other and right next to each other, so it's not an ideal environment. It was kind of tricky to manage through COVID when you had people sitting with a metre or two of each other. The first 6 months of the year has started off strong financially, with a 6-month income of 1.5 million. This is in comparison to the first 6 months of the previous financial year, where our income was just over 1.1 million. This represents close to a 30% increase in income, which is an increased return on investment for council. The increased funding came through a number of services and grants. We became fully staffed within the refugee service, so realised the full income for this contract. We also became fully staffed within our refugee health service, so that also increased the income there. So we had an increase in our court access contract costs, and we do a lot of work for the courts, so that helped. And we received one-off COVID funds to assist with attendance issues as well in the previous 6 months. In addition, we received one-off lottery funding to assist with counselling services for people who have been affected by COVID. Very hard to get counsellors in town if you need one. And also we got lotteries funding to support learners back into school. That was an initiative where we had identified a number of young people who had been out of school for some time, and the funding is used to put them on experiences that get them back into getting up and doing that. We've done some of the things at Burnham and those, the Burnham course, which I suppose gets young people out of the habit of being in bed and gets them active and up and energised, and it doesn't take much for them to come back and feel energised and want to get stuck back into life again. So it's been quite a good investment for some of those kids that have been out of school for extended periods. One area that's been a struggle for us over the past 6 months is staff recruitment. We've had 6 positions to fill over that time. We had 3 new positions and 3 where we were replacing staff. We found it harder to recruit currently than we ever have in the past, and we've had to invest a lot more time and money in this process, more so than ever in the past. We've also had to re-advertise positions, some positions up to 3 times to recruit the right person, and we've never seen that before either. Pre-COVID, it was common for us to easily get 15 to 20 applications for any job we advertised, and often have a number of people to interview and more than one that we could appoint. Sometimes we've advertised in the last several months and found that we might get 3 or 4 people apply, and we may not have somebody who's suitable to appoint. So talking to other non-profits, they're experiencing exactly the same thing, and of course talking to people we know in the business sector, they're experiencing exactly the same thing. So I dare say we're not immune, we're just in the same boat as everybody. But it has made it difficult to deliver some work when we haven't got a staff member, as you'll appreciate, and has made it quite costly when you have to go through the advertising process again and again. So that's probably just an overview of what we've done for the last 6 months. Obviously we presented some documents as well. I wonder, before we start talking about what we're going to do in the future, whether there are questions from around the table that people might have.
Well, did anybody have any questions for Kevin or Don? Tony? Tony, you'd like to...
Oh, just one question, Kevin. The refugee families, are they staying in Canterbury? Like, how long are they permanent, or are we finding that they do move on after a while? Like, what's their? Are they settled here? Maybe is the question.
Like any group of people who are plonked somewhere with no choice, you have a cross section of people who have found Ashburton to be a great place and love it, and others that would like to move on. And so we've probably had, over the time we've been doing it, which is 2 years now from when the first family came, we've had about 3 families move on, and there's another 3 that would like to move on. What we've found is the families that move on generally have adult children or late teen children who are wanting to study or do other things. It's also, as you might appreciate, I mean, the first family that left had sort of 5 daughters, and they were all of that, teenage or older age, and not really the kind of place in Ashburton where they would find probably a partner, so wanting to move to the city. So that tends to be it. We see people moving on as a success because they are, our whole goal is to support them to be self-sufficient and make their own way in the world, so they don't need support. And when somebody feels confident enough that they can move to a town, another town or city on their own, then it's kind of a success. I think also the people that have left, they've all gone to cities, because obviously some people come from cities, and if you move to a small town, it may not be the place for you, sort of thing. So it's not like we've had an influx of people wanting to leave. We've had a number of people who love it here, a number of people go directly into employment and doing really well. Kids are engaging really well in schools, and the schools are really supportive, so it's working really well for most.
Thank you. Mayor.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, thanks for the work you do on behalf of the community. It's a lot of work, good work that you do. And just think about the attendance numbers at school, and we do know that kids are less likely, more and more of them are not going to school. So, and the government's realised that now too. So increasing that funding will be good to get them into school. If you can get them into a school, a job, and on the path, then they're less likely to get into trouble. And driver's licensing is one of them, and it's part of your program. And there's about three, 4 programs, or 3, I think, operating in the district. So if they all feed into each other to give them the driver's license, then that will remove a barrier. A statistic I heard recently was most people who are in jail don't have a driver's license. So there's a link, I think. So getting the driver's license, getting them a job, less likely to end up in the prison system. Also, you're probably aware about then you talked about the NEETs, or those people who lay on the couch, young people, NEETs we call them, not an employment, education or training. So you'll be aware of the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, just launched last week, which is trying to get those young people into training or employment. So if you know who they are, we have a person here who needs to know who they are so they can do the one-on-one to get them into work. So having that knowledge feed into council would be good, so they can work one-on-one with them to give them a job. So, great work you're doing. Keep it up. Thanks.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a quick comment before my question. Saw the refugee families having a picnic at the disc golf area, and it looked like they were having a great time. It was out of hours, and I thought, oh, that's cool that the staff are doing that out of hours and getting them all together as a group and playing cricket with the kids, and it looked like they're having a great time. So I thought that was really good, and I wanted to bring it up and say well done. Kids' attendance issues, totally agree with everything you're saying. What are the schools themselves doing? And my question is, are they working well with what you guys are doing?
If we look at the schools who are the highest referrers, and they tend to be colleges, the college, of course, because attendance, it's not the college's fault, attendance just gets worse as children get older. They have, in partnership with the intermediate, invested money in employing their own person as well to do extra work within the schools. So they are sort of going above and beyond what they're just required within the Education Act as well. So I think they are recognised it and are doing a bit. They've been working quite hard to get extra money to put those sorts of things in place. So they have a staff member, and we work very closely with that staff member, our staff, and try and create a seamless process. I mean, the schools, I suppose, they've got 1,000 pools on them all over the show for their money and what they do. I would say they are doing extra than what is required of them.
Feel like you're making headway?
Well, we've just moved into a new contract, and obviously we're a couple of weeks into that new contract for the new school year. the ministry has done a massive review and had a huge amount of change of how they're going to do attendance services. It's been a messy start to the year for the first couple of weeks because we were hoping to hit the ground running and pick up those kids we knew of from last year. But the ministry's had such change within it. They are, well, the person we deal with in the ministry told us that they are flying the plane while they're building it. So it was their exact words. So we'll see how we go. But we've got more resources. That's what I can say. We haven't really sunk our teeth into it yet. So the ministry's done a lot of work around working with schools, informing schools that they need to do more before they refer to the attendance service, because the ministry's recognised that the attendance service was overrun and you just actually couldn't do any good work with not a lot of staffing and too many referrals. So there's a lot of work happening with schools to do more steps, family meetings, letters, etc., before they refer it on, see if they can get some headway.
Councillor Lovett, if yours can be the last question, and then we'll get Kevin to carry on.
Yeah, just following on from that, once they get children into the school, is there a follow-up program right throughout that first year so they don't drop back out again, to keep encouraging them to go and programs with the parents? Because to me, it's all right getting a kid to school and then 3 months down the line they'll drop out again, but they need an ongoing programs. Is that available?
There's a mixture of things. The attendance service really is about, we do work with the family of course, but once the child is attending regularly we have to close the case. That's part of the ministry contract. So that particular service does not sort of take that journey, but they can be re-referred again, and if there's any attendance issues, and we can pop straight back in. We have a number of other services where we work with young people, and we have family services as well. So we can refer internally or refer to other agencies, and Presbyterian Sport does a lot of parenting programs, and we'll often refer to them as well if we see the parents need support. So I suppose as a collective of organisations, there are parenting programs and there are youth support programs that we refer to take that journey with the young person after we close the actual attendance case. Yeah.
That's very
There could always be more services, but
that's
but there
an
are a
important
range of
stage
services.
once
Yeah.
you've got
But there's no succinct one service that takes that journey. It's about all the different providers working together and creating a multidisciplinary team.
One more
takes the
question
journey.
from the Chief Executive for you, Kevin.
More a comment, if I may, Madam Chair, really for councillors' information, but also for our guests. I'm part of a network called the Waitaha Priorities Group, which is a connection of all the Canterbury social government agencies, and I'm the representative for all the Canterbury councils. And we from time to time get reports on various social issues in the Canterbury region, and we did recently have one from the Ministry of Education on attendance issues across the Canterbury region. And it was very clear that there's an enormous amount of effort from the ministry, from schools, to try and get on top of the attendance issues. The Mayor and I then actually met with that same representative from the Ministry of Education separately around attendance and other issues in the Ashburton District in relation to the education system, and we were sort of encouraged that the statistics for Canterbury are really dominated by some of the issues in Christchurch, and that while we can always do better, and while the work that Kevin and his team are doing to improve attendance in Ashburton is critical and must continue, that some of the statistics that you read about regionally or nationally are not as bad here as they are in other parts of both our region and New Zealand. So that was encouraging for us to hear, and council should have some comfort that there is a lot of attention from many players in this space, of which Safe and Mid Canterbury is an important one for us. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor's yours, Kevin.
We've also provided our business case for the coming year. We've also provided our business case for the coming year, which everybody will have. As it sits, we are predicting no major changes within our service provision for the coming year, and as such have presented a budget that's just quite similar to the current year that we're in. We do currently have contracts to deliver COVID support, which come to an end on June 30 this year, but the funder, the Ministry of Social Development, have said that they are looking to continue this. So at this stage, we are just doing a budget, presuming that income will continue to come in. As nothing has been confirmed, though, obviously the Ministry is looking at putting more money into the North Island for that response, so that may have an impact on money that goes to other places around the country, but we'll just have to see what happens. We may also see an increase in funding for our attendance service, as said, with the budget, so that might go up as well. It's too early to tell, but it looks like they are putting a lot more money into that. Whilst we do have funding put aside in this financial year for our move to the new office space, it's likely that the move will actually happen in the new financial year. So this will be a time of transition for us, expenditure around just sort of finding our feet in the new building. In the next financial year, we also hope to be in a position to look at the purchase or building of a 4-bedroom home for our refugee social housing as well. So that is on the agenda, but we already have money put aside for that. That's not in the operational budget. It's hard to gauge what our work will be for the coming year, as things have been anything but stable over the last couple of years. But we're hoping, however, that the main change we will see was with extra funding, we will get on top of attendance issues and see the statistics for our community drop down substantially. We're also anticipating that the coming financial year will see an increase in the number of refugees coming to Ashburton, and predicting it will be the first full year of the actual quota that was originally planned pre-COVID for Ashburton. So, and that number talks about around 100 individuals per year made up of 30-odd families. That was the original plan 3 or 4 years ago that was agreed. We're also keeping in mind that migrants and migrant numbers will start to increase over the coming years within our district and next year, so we're just making sure that our migrant-based services have a bit of capacity, and we keep funding in that area in case we need to provide service or supports or settling support in that area. We haven't got much time, so I'll cut it short. So just to say thank you to Council for the opportunity to submit our annual business plan. We're looking forward to another productive year working with Council and supporting Council with the wellbeing of the district. So everybody has our plan. I don't know if people have, I'm sure you've all read it, cover to cover and inside and out. So I don't know if people would like to ask questions about the plan or what we're planning on doing next year.
Any questions around the table for Kevin on next year's plan?
I have, Kevin, the 257 you're requesting, 1,000, how's that compare to last year? What's the increase or decrease?
We've asked for 3% more.
3%.
Yeah. We have all staff in our organisation got a 3% raise, slightly below inflation, so we're just hoping to keep on top of that. And we've asked for an extra $7,500 for the Safe Communities project.
So 45,000.
Sorry?
45,000.
Yeah, it was 36
last plan.
Sorry?
45,000 for the Safer Communities plan. Yeah. Is that a one-off or is that continuing?
Continuous.
Yeah. So what does that 45 do?
So, well, that you're going to hear from Leslie next on the Safe Communities Initiative. That pays for that.
Right, sure.
Pays for Leslie. Yep. Basically pays her wage.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So, yeah. Just to quickly tell you, when we launched that initiative, ACC provide all new initiatives 5 years funding. And we've been going for 4.5 years, so in the next financial year, and they provide 15,000 a year, and the next financial year that 15 is dropping to 7.5. So to maintain Leslie at the same hours, we're basically asking for another 7.5. And I suppose when you hear Leslie talk, I'm hoping you'll think, well, this is a good asset for the community, and this is a great project, and it's well worth the investment. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Don, would you like to say anything? For a few minutes?
Just thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, sorry.
You can wait.
Can I wait?
You can wait till after Don has his speech.
Okay.
Thank you. Please proceed.
That's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
Shall I turn my
You're
button
a
off?
guest. You go first.
Just a couple of things, if I may. I've always been at pains to point out, I think, that the tremendous amount of faith and confidence we have in Kevin and in the work that his staff do, which is very much a result of the work that he does. I just want to also pay tribute to the board members who are the trustees of the organisation, and welcome Councillor Todd to that group. Those are people with a lot of commitment to the district and to the community, and they obviously work, as many people do in this community. They give their services for nothing, and I'm very grateful for the work and support they do. Just to reinforce a couple of things that Kevin has said. Firstly, because the organisation has grown so much in the last few years, some of you will remember that from Go to Woe, we are looking to future-proof services with the purchase of accommodation and the shift of business premises we've talked about. You can't grow an organisation the way this has without doing some future planning, and we hope that we've got that under control. We have become a complicated organisation. Page 7 of the business plan gives you an overview of our structure. You will have seen that. So really this is a thank you from me to the board members who work with me, the staff who work with Kevin and Kevin himself, and to council for the opportunities and the support that you provide us with. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Tony, can I invite you to
Thank you, Madam
or
Chair.
ask a question?
I just, I suppose, always look at professional services and things like that in the budget, and I noticed our accountancy fees last year were around 80,000. I see we're budgeted for 92, I think, this one, which is a 15% increase, and I thought, according to my calculator. The reasons for the increase?
Firstly, we don't employ a staff member who does financial work. So when you see a contract fee for financial services, it's actually in lieu of having staff. And so interestingly, just to give you a quick bit of history, several years ago we had one staff member who did all our financial work, and during the audit process the auditor said it was quite high risk having one staff member with all that knowledge, and we weren't really a big enough organisation to have multiple staff members with that knowledge, so the auditor advised us to contract it out to a company. So when you see that figure of 80,000, you think that's a lot. We're not paying an accountant, we're paying a company who does all our books, runs Xero, does all our invoicing, etc. And I imagine if we had a staff member, all our reporting, we don't actually use an accountant. So if you had a staff member doing that work, you'd be paying 70,000, 80,000 anyway. So we think it's a good value for money, and it negates risk because they have a number of staff. It's gone up a bit basically because the complexity of our organisation has continued to increase. You'll see that our funding went up 30%, which probably means 30% more work for people doing the finances, I presume, invoicing and cost centres and things. So does that sort of explain it? Oh, good.
Any more questions?
I've just got
big
a comment, if
panellists,
that's
thank
all
you.
right. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin and Don, and as part of the board, I think I've been on the board for quite a few years now. It's always good hearing your presentation, but this term we have an extra councillor on the board, so instead of the one we've got two, but we've actually got a bonus councillor with Russell on as well as an independent. But we had a chat at the meeting, the last meeting, I think, about maybe inviting all councillors along to sort of have a look through the offices and meet some staff, etc., etc. Has there been any thought to that? I think it was sort of doing something in conjunction with Community House, maybe.
Yes, we'd thought about it. Part of the plan was we'd like to take councillors through the new building we're looking at, and the deadline for looking at that building was pushed out to the 28th of February. So we were thinking once we know the outcome of that, then we might plan something, and councillors might like to look through the current community house and the new building as well, if it is indeed our new building. Yeah, so that's, we were sort of thinking, organising that in March. Yeah.
Right, no more questions. Thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you, Don, for coming in today, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Right, we're pretty much on time. Leslie, can I invite you up, please, from Safer Communities to present your report? Have you got that up? Everybody got their Safer Communities? Do you want me to help you? Do you want me to help you? No, you deselect, push your luggage label again and deselect, and then you close it.
Yeah, no, it's tricky.
Would you like me to come and help you and leave the chair? You got it sussed? They'll be fine. Okay, Leslie, they will be fine. They just got to learn the technology.
Right, thank you.
So you may go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cameron. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Safe Communities program, which is one small program which is part of Safer Mid Canterbury. And for the information of newer councillors, this program came about in 2019, and it was actually at the request of the council to Safer Mid Canterbury that we seek accreditation for the district as a whole to become what's called a safe community, and then from there to set up a safe community program. So we went through a very laborious process that took about 6 months and produced a massive document that sort of looked at what were our key issues from a safety perspective, using the word safety in its broadest sense. So we looked at things like statistics from police and road crashes and all sorts of things. We talked to the community, we researched government policy, and we came up with a very large plan that was then accredited that said for our community, we've got some key issues that we want to work on, and they were essentially at that time falls in older people, leading to both death and significant injury, road crashes, family harm, and theft and burglary. And theft and burglary is, at the moment, about 67% of the crime reported in the district is theft and burglary. So, you know, what can we do about that? So that's where it started. We had 27 agencies sign up to be part of the Safe Communities program, and we produced a 5-year plan, and we started working very hard on that plan. We were very lucky to have Deputy Mayor Liz on as the chair, and I think her support through has been quite steadfast in terms of keeping it focused and keeping us moving along, achieving what we want to achieve. We remain a strong coalition. The meeting we had in January, end of January, I expected about 8 people to turn up because a lot of people were still on holiday. 21 people turned up out of interest to find out what's going on. And then below that Safe Communities steering group level, we have a whole lot of groups working on particular issue areas. So we've got, for instance, a falls prevention network that's got Sport Canterbury, Age Concern, Health, Safe Communities, all working on ACCs on that group. What are we going to do around falls prevention and for older people in the district? And we've got a number of those different groups. So that then brings in a huge network of agencies underneath those 27 that are all working away on particular areas of interest to them, to their agency. So I've given you 2 documents. One is the plan, the report on last year from July to December, and the other one is the new business case for 1 July this year through to 30th of June 2024. The 6 months that we had, bloody COVID, was a nightmare for me because a lot of people, agencies, couldn't come out and play with me, collaborate, because collaboration is the key to this project. It's about, you know, strength in numbers and people putting together their knowledge and their resources to get an outcome for the community, and it's a lot stronger doing it in a collective than it is each little agency trying to tilt at windmills all on their own. A lot of the agencies couldn't play. They were stressed, stretched, people were seconded, people were ill, so we had COVID, the big C word, had a bit of an impact on our program. But from about October, things started to change, which was really good to see. So we were able to get some things going again, like our falls prevention group, which hadn't met for a year because everybody was sort of too busy and no one was going to any of the classes, have now got together, and we have a plan. We're going to be at the Positive Ageing Expo on the 9th of March. we're putting a large feature in the Courier on the 2nd of March, so we're off again promoting strength and balance classes for older people because the numbers have just dropped because people have been too scared to go out, didn't know whether they could exercise without a mask on, etc. It's really rocked the older population of the district. So that one now is going again. The Mid-Canterbury Community Transport Service, that program was hugely impacted by COVID, but looking at the numbers now for the 6-month period, we transported 60 people from around the district into Ashburton to do what they want to do, go to the hospital, go to the dentist, meet up with friends. So 60 people over 6 months. The previous whole year we had 39. So that program's now starting to go, and we've just recruited 6 new volunteer drivers because we're expecting a lot more business this year. We were able to run the Safety Village at the AMP show for the first time since 2019, so that was really good, and it was great to see quite a number of councillors called in and said hello and worked on stands as part of the Safety Village. We ran a campaign on scams through July and August, and that was with the police, Digital Waitaha, Ashburton Library, Neighbourhood Support, out of concern coming from police about the number of scams and how to make people more aware of who do you talk to, where do you go, what do you do. And particularly with older people, a lot of older people are very embarrassed to tell anybody that they've been scammed. So what we're doing is promoting Citizens Advice Bureau, Neighbourhood Support as the 2 places. If you want to just tootle along very quietly and have a word to someone, say, do you think I've been scammed? Those 2 agencies are going to be able to provide that service and then give people some advice about where to go. So police do not want to know about small-time scams. They can't manage it. So the key agency, referral agency, is NetSafe, is where you are asking people to go if they've been scammed. Apart from banks, of course, you go straight to your bank if it's a bank scam. We also did a ski safety promotion with ACC in September, and that was the Thinker statue, the Rodin's copy, which had been up on Mount Hutt ski field, which was part of their Have a campaign, you know, think about what you're doing before you get injured, who's going to look after you. We took him around, or Liz did, and Wendy from ACC, 3 schools, and did a safety program which was very well received. So looking at doing this ski again, because we're quite unique, our district, for 10 to 14-year-olds. The number 1 injury is ski and snowboard. Everywhere else it's rugby. Ours is ski and snowboard. So, you know, doing some work on ski safety is a good thing to do. So that was kind of what we did. Now, looking forward, so next year, 23-24, we've actually hit year 5 of our 5-year strategy, which is quite amazing because it's gone like a bolt out of the blue. But I think we've done quite a lot of bloody good work since 2019. We've set up the Citizens Advice Bureau, and you may think, what on earth is that to do with safety? And that's about access to information to keep your family safe. If you don't know where to go, if you've got a young person in trouble and there's no one reliable, up-to-date information service for the district, then we're in trouble as a community. So that Citizens Advice Bureau has become absolutely key as a resource for agencies to put all their information into. And at the moment they're looking at working with Kevin on updating what used to be called the Helping Hands directory, and also doing on the website our own Ashburton Community Directory. So I won't talk too much about that because Sarah's coming after morning tea, but I think that that's an absolute key resource, and access to information is absolutely key for people to be well and safe. We set up the community transport service because we had feedback that people in rural communities were very isolated and couldn't get into town to do what they wanted to do. The Falls Network I've talked about, the Safety Village I've talked about, theft, burglary and scams campaigns I've talked about, and then lots and lots and lots of messaging. We've got our own Facebook page, we do a lot of social media stuff, and we have a free monthly column in the Courier newspaper that they give us, and all the agencies can put a column in each time and promote what they're doing. New stuff for 23-24, we really want to look at water safety, given the national drowning statistics. We want to see what we can do, not to reinvent the wheel, but how we can help national agencies like Water Safety New Zealand get those messages out at a local community level. So working with them and promoting the key messages there. Possibly something to do with workplace wellbeing. There's been a lot of feedback come through from citizens' advice, the number of inquiries they've had about people being bullied in the workplace, not having the right terms and conditions. So there could be something there that we can work up, and we would obviously be working with council's economic development people around possibly something on that. The child safety program, I think we've talked about that before. That's the program teaching kids and adults about hazards like choking hazards, batteries, etc. That's going to be a cool little program. We're going to get that going this year. We haven't had anyone to actually staff it. So that's probably enough. I don't want to eat into your... Oh no, we're only at 10:15.
Yeah, no, you've got...
Well, you can always have more morning tea time if you would like. That's probably enough. So yeah, that's sort of what we're doing. So it's a small program. I mean, I'm only 20 hours a week. I rely a lot on all of the collaborations and all the other agency staff working hard for us on this Safe Communities program. There's huge numbers. I mean, yesterday we had a hui at the Marae, for instance, on parenting, and we had about 25 people turn up who now are really keen to create a parenting network and look at how to make parents safer, how do parents get access to information when they need it. So, you know, there's a huge number of people working hard, but it's a small program. But I think it's made some good impacts for this community since it's been going. So I'll shut up now and hope there's not too many hard questions.
Thank you, Leslie, and you definitely have made some significant impacts. Thank you. Councillor Lovett.
Right, I had a couple of questions. You're working with the road safety, and we're just thinking one really, we were out at the show with Rural Woman in the 20k either way from school buses, and we would like that picked up because there has been kids and near misses around this county, and I think we are really important to educate drivers that when they go past school buses that are slowing down or stopping, it's 20 k's. I nearly had grandchildren run over about 6 months ago, and I think that's a really important one we need to start pushing right through the country in the flashing lights. And Rural Women can't do that on their own, so they were asking that. And just going to the transport service, do the people that go on the bus, do they pay for that themselves, or is it rated, or how is it funded?
So it's funded at the moment by a rate that's levied on everyone except people who live in Ashburton Township. So no one who lives in the township is rated, and that's because there is a taxi service already operating in the township, and that becomes a grant that comes through to the Mid-Canterbury Community Vehicle Trust. It's around $10,000 a year, and we use that to offset operating costs. We charge a fee, but the fee is $15. You know, it's a minimal fee, but it covers some of our wear and tear on our vehicle and our petrol costs, and then the rest of the fund is the grant plus lottery funding that we have to hand at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Carolyn, and thanks for the work that you do. There's a lot of work there, a lot of good stuff. You're asking for 45k. ACC have dropped you 7.5, I understand?
Yep.
Yep. So the 45k percentage on last year is what that is. First question. And the ACC dropping 7.5, with all the work that you're doing, and it seems good, really good work,
Yeah.
why are they cutting you back in funding?
ACC no longer have a national budget for any Safe Communities initiatives, so that they've essentially wrapped up that. We have inquired and had the formal answer back from ACC that there is no longer a Safe Communities national budget, and there is no pot of money anywhere that they can use to fund these projects. So we were one of the last. I think there might be one or two other safe communities around New Zealand who've still got any ACC funding. So they're essentially out at the end of at the end of this year. What happened in the first year was they only gave us half the money because it took us 6 months to get the accreditation. So we burrowed away doing the accreditation. Then when we started to actually deliver something, they started giving us money. So we came in with half the funding in the first year. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. Has your board written to the Minister of ACC and expressed your concern for the work that you're doing? Cutting the funding doesn't seem the right thing to do.
Do you want to answer that, Mrs. Chair?
Not a missus, but I'll give it a go.
Ms. Chair.
No, we haven't, and that's probably something that needs to come from the Safer Mid Canterbury board, I would say, looking at Don. But I know we had 5 years of, I think it was $15,000 annually. And they have pulled it. Well,
I'm aware,
that's
for
what
instance,
happens.
Auckland have just had, as their funding's gone, Auckland City Council. So because they didn't have an alternative source of funding, they now don't have a Safe Communities program operating because they didn't want to fund someone in a 6-month temporary contract, and they didn't feel they could achieve very much. So they're the one I have talked to, who I know have also lost the funding. So, yeah.
Do you want to talk again?
We have a full board meeting coming up very shortly. I'd be very happy to add that to the agenda. We'll pick up the issue.
Liz.
Yes, and just going back to that, a lot of Safe Communities works are done around the country within councils. So the council actually employ a staff member to run their Safe Communities program. So I think when the 17A review was done, 2016, 2017, it was recommended that we had a Safe Communities, but it also recommended that it could be done under the umbrella of Safer Mid Canterbury. So it all kind of tied in. My question, and I know the answer, but I just want to make other people aware of it, is the off-road cycle track bike schools park that I think Leslie, you put a submission into the walking and cycling strategy, and it's just, I think it's sitting there somewhere, but I know that our group are really keen to work with council to sort of make that happen, because it's just a little bike track for kids or anyone who wants to learn road skills.
Hamish, you'd like to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Liz, you may or may not be aware that I think around about 2019, this council partnered with some of the irrigation companies to produce a water safety video following an awful drowning in a water race. And so if you are wishing to pick up the piece of work in and around water safety, and in fact, the irrigation company ourselves worked with Water Safety New Zealand, or whatever the name of them are, to deliver that video on message. So it may be that there's some material already there that can be either refreshed or just simply re-released under another promotion that you're wishing to energise. So reach out to us when you start to get a little further ahead with your thinking around water safety, because we have got some collateral in the data bank somewhere.
And if I can just make a quick comment on the bike skills part, I thought this, because I'm a member of a service club, and I'm pretty sure that we were interested, all the service clubs were interested in supporting that initiative, and then it sort of stopped, and I think there was some reason that it stopped, but perhaps we could look at getting that going again, because the service clubs were very motivated to support that. Yeah, Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask the 45,000 you're asking for, is that going to be a continual ask on a yearly basis from council in the future going forward?
Yes, that was asked and answered earlier.
Yes,
Okay, to add to the,
unless we can get some traction somewhere else. But
okay, right.
Noting that the rest of the program is in your long-term plan, it's just that little additional bit of funding that we are now needing to go look for, because ACC are going to withdraw.
Thank you for that. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Mrs. Chair, the bike park, we had people coming through Tinwald to have a look there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it is, but they looked at the place and were quite happy, but I'm not sure. That's
Yeah, I
why,
think that would be good to progress. Mr Mayor.
I think Kevin was going to give us a percentage increase.
Yeah, the percentage increase from earlier.
What, sorry?
The percentage increase, Hamish asked earlier, and I beg your pardon, Neil asked earlier about the percentage increase.
For the Safe Communities project, I added 3% to what we had last year and plus the 7.5 thousand. So 3% on the last figure plus 7.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the 3%
Yeah.
earlier in the report, yeah. Okay, Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Leslie, for your report. The bus service you talked about that runs around the county, do we get any funding from ECAN from that? I'll tell you. Okay.
Yes, that's the rate that is collected that I was talking about before. So ECAN and NZTA collected via the council and then handed over to the Mid-Canterbury Community Vehicle Trust, and it's around 10,000 a year.
Okay. Well, when I was at Rotary last night, and you learn stuff when you go to Rotary, the 10% increase in the ECAN rate for this financial year, the majority of that funding is going to subsidise the passenger service in Christchurch. And I thought, well, I hope that we get our share of that. I know we don't have a bus service, but, you know, it's something we should be aware of. The volunteer drive promotion, did you have any luck there?
We've been inundated, actually, with people. So I've stopped at 6 because I think that's probably enough. And interestingly, our oldest man is 80 and most of them are in their 70s and they are just dying to do something as a volunteer, and they like driving and they like talking to people. So they're the kind of three prerequisites that we need for, you know, sitting in a car going up to Medvin and back with people who want to go to the book barn and change their books and do all the things that we all don't think anything of because we've got a car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Just the cycle track. I know that Steve Favish was talking to Rotary about that, but obviously Steve is no longer with us, so that's where it sits. I'm not too sure.
No, stop before that.
Yeah, think two things. That last point, we're making a note of this discussion in and around that bike park, and we'll work out where that's currently sitting. My other point was to the comment you made around ECAN and public transport in Christchurch. This district doesn't pay for that, so ECAN's rates are a little bit like ours. They targeted to where the provision of that service rests. So while ECAN's overall rate increase is 10%, and a big part of that may well be public transport in Christchurch, that's not a rate that is imposed on this district. So it's not about getting our share. It's about if we want a service, we have to pay for our piece of it, and that's what the 10,000 is. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, I know we made a submission to support our funding from ECAN for the. So while it's $10,000, we get half of that from ECAN, and the other half comes from NZTA. So it's a small amount, and it's charged to everyone in the district who doesn't live in the Ashburton township.
I attended one of your meetings, Leslie, and there was we talked about the paucity of public transport in the township and in Ashburton, and there were some concerns as to why it could not be provided. Have you put any thought into that, or is that something that may receive some thought later? Because it is a big barrier, especially as not only do we have former refugees and people, migrants, but especially as our population is ageing and people are losing their licences as they get older. Have there been any thought? I mean, I understand the taxi rebate, but I've done a bit of reading around that, so it doesn't answer all the questions that people have.
It's a tricky one because, you know, when we first started, we looked at who all the providers were, and we didn't want to stand on anybody's toes. People like, you know, commercial small bus services. So, you know, we tried to find the niche in the market, the gap where we could potentially fill a need that no one else wanted to do because it was too damned expensive to try and cart people up and down from Medvin and,
that's right,
you know, at a reasonable rate. And that's where we've sat that service is only a couple of years old, but at the AGM, that issue of inner town transport did come up, and it is on the agenda for the trust meeting on the 28th of February to look through the AGM recommendations, and one of them is that there was also the issue of around transport for refugee families living in the township as well, who might not necessarily have the budget to, to afford to use the taxi service a lot. So yeah, it's on our agenda. It's a difficult one.
Thank you.
The issue has been, I recall, has been twofold to solve. One is the effect on other businesses in Ashburton that offer transport services, and secondly, someone has to pay. So there's no, the provision of public transport needs to then be paid for by the community that now wants to have that public transport. So if there is to be public transport in Ashburton, Ashburton will have to pay. And generally speaking, the fare levels don't pay for all the service. So it's not user pays, and that's where community needs to then, via ECAN rates, would end up having to pay for there to be provision of public transport to support that service. So it's always been the detriment to existing businesses, and the fact that the community will have to pay should there be a desire to have public transport. So those are the two hurdles to overcome.
And if I could just add, Madam Chair, we have a ECAN staff member usually make most of our community vehicle trust meetings, and she runs the My Way, was in charge of the My Way service in Timaru, so she's well aware of what's going on, but there's not a simple solution in it, and it all comes down to money.
That's right, sadly, that's right. Anything further to add, Leslie, to your report? Or? Well, we've done tremendously well this morning. Thank you everybody for your attendance, and we'll go and have a cup of tea and come back at 10:45. Thank you. We'll be determined by this.
Stop flashing.
Welcome back, everybody, and I thank you all for turning up on time. I'd now like to please ask Sarah Clifford from the Mid-Canterbury Citizens Advice Bureau to begin her presentation. Thank you, and welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors and new councillors, very excited to see your lovely faces join the team. So I've obviously sent out the presentation. I've got a little bit of a bribe there with our brochure, our bookmark and a few little jelly beans. The plan for that, I've got plenty more, so if you ever get inquiries and you're not too sure where to send them, you know now where to send them, so that's really great. So my report, I thought that I would just briefly go through the report and any questions. Then I've got a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation, and then I thought if we had time I might show you how we gather that information. So what a client inquiry, what a client interview looks like for the client inquiry. So if that's okay. So this is obviously for the last 6 months, end of July, 1st of July to 31st of December. I put a little bit of background. I know some of the councillors that are old hats will know a lot of the background, but I thought some of the new councillors might want to know some of that background about how we started and why we're so important to the community. So for some of you that, so if you've got any questions about that. I also put a thing on the email when I sent that out to say any new councillors or old, if you would like to come and visit the CAB and see what we do and how we do it, you'd be more than welcome to come along. Just let me know. Or turn up anytime, and we can give you a bit of a tour around and show you exactly how it works. Be more than welcome. As well as obviously referring other people to the service. So that's the first few pages. So what I thought I would do is just have a look at some of the numbers. I did note on page 8 I'm looking at. So some of those numbers were actually incorrect. It's 318 total inquiries for that period. So looking about the same, roughly the same as previous years, but quite a lot more than the first 6 months of last year. Phone and face-to-face inquiries are predominantly our big kind of ticket. We haven't done a lot around the social media, messenger, that kind of space yet, because once we start it will be a never-ending cycle where we'll just have to keep putting resources into it. So kind of have left that off, but that is a huge gap and a huge opportunity for further development in that space. So our profit and loss, we're looking pretty good. Obviously we've got another 6 months on that, but we've also, with the timing, a lot of funding. So we've got another couple of funding. There's about 3 funding applications that are due to come in kind of this 6 months. So yeah, it'll balance out. And obviously we've got some good funding from COGS, Community Trust and Lottery Grants Board. The Lottery Grants Board, that comes in through a national application, so each CAB around the country just gets $5,000. And then we've got really good support from the Community Trust and COGS. We've received 3-year multi-year funding for the next 3 years, so that's incredible. But really it all stems from the support we get from the Ashburton District Council and you guys. So the support that you guys give us makes it more valued by the other funders because you value us. So that's really important, so thank you. Any questions on the report? I've skipped through quite a bit, but anything that anybody wants to bring up now?
Any questions, anybody? No? Oh.
Can we do the financials now or later?
Yeah, we can do that now.
We've just done them, so that will be appropriate now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see you made a $25,000 profit.
So that was just for the 6 months to the end of the year, but our financial year is to the end of 1st of July, so it's got another 6 months to go.
So you think there won't be a profit by the end?
No.
Okay.
No. No. Gosh, no. No. No, absolutely not. And so that's also based on so our board's wanting to increase some spending in some places, community directory obviously, and more hours for either the community directory or myself. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamish.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I wonder if I could just ask, what areas do you see that the Citizen Advice Bureau could extend to, or what gaps do you experience because of presumably resource issues or expertise or whatever? Are there areas that you continually come across where you think if we had X we could meet that need? Are there any sort of unmet needs?
Absolutely. I think the more funding we could get, the more we could do. Absolutely. I've got I've got lists of things that I would love to do, and operating sites outside of where we are so that we can be more accessible. Going to the college and running clinics there, going to some of our big employers, running sites there, going to Methven or Okaira or some of the rural towns so that they could access us better, especially with connectivity issues with email and stuff. There's just so much scope and capacity. So I'm on safe communities, I'm on safe families, I'm on refugees committees, I'm on multiple committees, but the more hours that I or a person in my position can have, the more we can recruit more volunteers, we can be open more hours, we're hoping to do a late night, so accessible to people that are working. Just the more funding, the more we can do. Absolutely, yeah. So you give me more money and I will make it work. I'll make it better. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else from the report?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Sarah, we're opening the library at the end of this year. So does Citizens Advice Bureau, should it be in a library or should it be where it is now? Is there any synergies with having it where the libraries aren't like libraries as they used to be? They're a different place today.
Yeah.
Where does it belong?
Absolutely, there are advantages and disadvantages for both. So advantages for being in the library is that obviously your opening hours will be a lot more accessible for the community, late evenings, weekends. So all of our resources that we've currently got, the paper resources, that's just, I guess, if we are not there, it's a relationship that we have with the library staff just to make sure those core resources are available. They often refer to us, and often they've got the CAB site up as one of their things on all the computers. So they're kind of already feeding into us. So that's just about a good relationship. Also, I think some of the advantages of being at where we are now, obviously, community house is a great space. We've got a really good relationship with tenants, so we can kind of they call it a warm handshake. You can take people to a person and say, look, this is the person you need to talk to. So that's quite a good fit. The space is obviously an issue. I'd love to have more space. I've got a couple of volunteers that have mobility issues, so I've got one in a mobility scooter. So just having a bigger meeting spaces would be great. There's fors and against, pros and cons. I would love to be in that space. I think it would be a great space, but also we need to be, if there's an issue with council, will they come to us and say, we have an issue with council? They'll think that we are part of you. So yeah, and that's the same issue we have with funding for like business funding. Like we can't really ask a business, because what if an employer or a client has an issue with that service? They might think that we are not impartial. So yeah. I couldn't imagine either, Mr. Brown. No. Yeah, absolutely. It also means that for some of the for a lot of the councils and CABs around the country, they're actually in council libraries. A lot of them have been, a lot of new libraries that have been built with space for CAB. So when the development plans for this one were being developed, I was told that there just wasn't enough meeting space for us to be included as well. But if that changes, then happy to have conversations. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. You ask for $15,000 plus GST.
Sorry, start that again.
You're asking for $15,000 plus GST. Are you paying GST?
We are registered, yes.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to do the PowerPoint presentation just to show you a couple of things. So we are obviously phone and face-to-face has been pretty important. It's tracking about the same. Face-to-face has usually been about 50%, so obviously it's kind of, a little bit more skewed to phone at the moment, which is interesting. Where our clients are coming from. So predominantly, obviously, a huge chunk are coming from Ashburton. We've got a few hits from Hinds, rural Mid-Canterbury and Christchurch. And I have said before that there's a lot of people that don't want to identify that they are from Rakaia if they are looking at a tricky conversation and they don't want to be identified. So we can't identify who the person is and based on all the different data, but they may just say they're from Ashburton. So please note that some of that data may be a little bit skewed. We've got obviously getting some inquiries from outside the region, and that is mainly to do with two things. One is people concerned about family and friends that live here. So they're ringing up and they're wanting to know about local services that are able to support their family member that lives here. So my mum lives there, she's looking at going into a rest home, what do I need to look at, things like that. The other one is people new to wanting to either move back home to Ashburton. So they're like, what's rental looking like, what's some options, or also new people to town. So looking to move to Ashburton, so they're contacting us, which is really quite exciting. So that's why there's a bit of variety there. Our top 10 categories: relationships, legal services, conditions of work, neighbourhood problems. We get that a lot with trees and fences. I'm sure that the council tends to send them to our way, which is great. Budget and general difficulties, rental and housing. So the top 5 last 6 months was consumer law, relationships, conditions of work, and the top 3 spot again, citizenship and immigration and rental housing. So quite a change in the top 10 categories compared to the first 6 months. So there's just another pretty way of showing the same thing. Obviously, you can have access to this presentation. I'll email it to them. So I looked different. I haven't done this one before. I just looked at some of their migrant reports just to see what was available. Face-to-face is where they want to come and see us. 87% of migrants wanted to see us face-to-face. So that's quite a difference compared to our average. And our top 5 countries were India, Japan, Netherlands, Tonga and Australia. So countries of origin, so that's quite interesting. I had a look at their ethnicity and length of time. If you see, obviously New Zealand, European, Asian, Pacific and other, and also the length of time, like 5 years plus is the biggest amount of time there, that orange one on the right hand side there. So over 50% of them have been living in New Zealand longer than 5 years. So interesting.
Sorry to interrupt, Sarah, just a quick question. What's the absolute numbers for that as a percentage? You know,
be 100.
No, the percentages will add up to 100, but how many people?
Oh, I'm not sure. Sorry, I can't tell you that. I could have a look up. and get back to you on that one. So obviously we've got huge array of inquiries. So most people are coming in and there are multiple kind of inquiries going on as part of it. So you're starting an interview and then there's just multiple kind of areas in which they've got an issue that we're trying to look at and solve. So first of all, it's just listening, working out and a breakdown of where we need to focus on and where they can start the process, because sometimes it's just so overwhelming. A lot of my volunteers said that they thought they were going to be able to tell people where the local bowls club is, and actually it's so much more than that. It's quite overwhelming. So just giving them the right support and training is really important, and backup. So we've got, I mean, these are all the inquiries. Just so many different topics. So the volunteers can't be experts at everything. So it's all about just knowing where to look and the information that we've got just to be able to back them up. And it goes on and on. Okay, so any questions about that? No? Okay. What I thought I'd show... Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So, thank you. And your hours 10 to 1.
Yes.
If there was some more funding available, and one of the options then is either increase your services and your volunteers, or would it be better to increase the amount of hours that you're open?
A tricky one, isn't it? It's really tricky. I guess we would have, firstly, we'd have to recruit more volunteers to be open more. So we'd have to do a little bit of research in terms of, you know, what night would suit people. Some of the CRBs around the country run a Saturday morning clinic. I'm quite keen to try and work with Community House. There's a couple of other tenants that would be interested in doing a late night. So whether or not we get some JPs interested as well, or some other services that could work in that space as well, and have,
Because for some people, even making a phone call during work time is quite difficult to find somewhere private to go to make that phone call.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're our hours the volunteers are on. Like, for example, over Christmas, I answered all the emails and all the phone inquiries. It all went to my computer. So I answered all of those. So we're open, like it says 10 to 1, that's just face-to-face. Yeah. So we can, I monitor all the emails. So if stuff comes in and it needs urgent attention,
Thank you, Mrs. Madam. I'll get there. Just a question. Volunteers, how easy is it to get them? I'm struggling. Timald Reserve Board, another board, a lot of boards struggling with volunteers. How do you get them? What's the trick?
We've got a good relationship with Volunteering Mid and South Canterbury. A lot of it's come through, a lot of our volunteers have come through the paper, through the Courier and Ashburton Guardian, through just promotion and advertising what we're doing. They're interested. Word of mouth, people wanting to volunteer with friends and people like that. Family members, a bit of arm twisting. Just a variety. I think it's a certain, you've got to be it's pretty full on what we're doing. And I think it's surprised a lot of people how full on it is. And I don't know whether that's because the changing dynamics of what's going on in people's lives, but there seems to be a heap more anxiety and mental health. I've made 3 referrals for suicide prevention in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, sorry. The question was, how do you get volunteers?
How do I get them? They want to be volunteering with me.
Okay. Thank you.
They want to support the service. They like it.
Thank you. Councillor McMillan, if you could be the last question for this little
Yep,
area.
I will. Thanks, Sarah. Just wondering, what kind of support do you get from citizens' advice, like the umbrella network? I know I was reading in the paper that the Auckland Council was looking at not funding their CAB anymore. So how does that, going forward, would that mean that they would have to close, or would the national sort of office step in and help them out? How does it all work?
So the structure is the national office, like I said, does that lotteries funding application on behalf of kind of 85 sites. They do all the Your Rights articles in the background, and obviously the computer stuff. So they're checking constantly all the queries and the questions that come in. So they're a backup if we have a really tricky. They've got lawyers and on staff. They have the learning and development team, so they support with all the learning and development. It's any issue they will support us absolutely. National office is fantastic. In terms of the wider network, we've got kind of 85 sisters around the country that we connect with. We've got a local kind of group, Christchurch, North Canterbury, myself, Timaru and Oamaru. We've kind of set up a bit of a network so that we can share information and resources, which has proved incredibly helpful for the flooding. So when we went home for the flooding, the Timaru person supported us with checking the Facebook and things like that. So we're kind of working together on those kind of issues, which is really great. In terms of Auckland Council funding, I thought I might have this question. The Auckland, obviously in the report that I gave you, it showed this exactly the same thing happened in Wellington. With the PricewaterhouseCoopers report they put together, and they found that for value for money and access and support, you just can't beat the citizens of Ice Bureau. In terms of the community directory, you'd probably need 4 staff at council working full time trying to get all that, whereas I've got volunteers updating all of that. Interestingly, CAB New Zealand put out a report on Auckland. Obviously, they had that announcement that they wanted to reduce the funding. So the media uptake and the feedback, just why would you do such a thing, has been huge. And also the amount of referrals they've had from council for flooding inquiries and support and help, has been huge. So the council staff are still referring to the CAB when that's just, they can't, do any more. So, if you don't want to fund it, quite tricky. They also do a lot of support in kind. So a lot of the councils that aren't financially funding some of the CABs, they provide a space, like we talked about with a space in the library, or so some of the other councils, they might not show that it's financially, but they're giving them a venue and rent-free site. So there is support from councils in a variety of ways there.
Thank you.
There is a report that CAB New Zealand's put out about Auckland and the funding, so if you would like that, I'm happy to pass that on, if that would help.
No.
One really quick
Neil.
one. Do you pay rent where you are?
Yes, yeah.
I can't see it here, look at it quickly, but what is it approximately?
So
I think it's in there, it's 15.
Probably,
rent, it's about 6,500 a year. And I also pay for a car park because my volunteers have got limited, I've got a number that have got limited mobility, and the parking around community houses not so good.
I see it at 6 to 8, thanks.
Yeah. But that's obviously for 3 months, so yeah.
Oh, it's 6 months.
That's 6 months, yeah.
That'll be 12.
So it says 3 there, 3.5, I think it's 6.
It says 3201.
Yeah.
So we double that for 12, so it's 6.5. You're right, yeah.
It shows up as
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, you're right. Sorry, it's over the page. Page 10, let's have a look at that. Rent, 6,000, yeah, so it's the same. Yeah, so it's the 4 years.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the P&L.
Yeah.
Right, thank you, Sarah. Please carry on with your presentation.
So that budget also, the difference in this budget is salaries. This is based on if I was to work 30 hours a week, so I'm only on 20, and that's either an increase or to have somebody looking after the community directory. So that's the difference there. So that's the difference in, yeah. So wages and salary is obviously a lot less on the other page. Does that make sense?
I can't actually see it.
So salaries on the annual budget proposed for the next financial year, 23-24, is 43,000, but the 6 months previous is only 16, so that's the difference. That's why it's different, because we're hoping to expand.
So an extra $10,000, is that correct?
We're hoping to expand with that, yes.
Yeah. Have you finished your presentation, Sarah?
I was going to go through client interview, show you how it looks.
We've got about 3 minutes.
3 minutes? No, let's not. More questions.
Any further questions for Sarah? Lynette, you've put your button. Do you have something to say? No, I'll beg your pardon. No further questions? Thank you, Sarah. Well, you've got another couple of minutes if you'd like to do something.
Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, so this is in the background. This is kind of our interface here. So we can see, I can see all the interviews. We can see the day book, which has got kind of a brief summary of previous inquiries from the day before. And we can look back, which is really great, obviously the community directory. But this is how our volunteers do a client interview. So we obviously have the difference between a whole interview and a quick reference. So a whole interview, I kind of explain it like you're giving them more than one option. So a quick reference would be they want information on the local bowling club. So you give it to them. Or I want the phone number for community law. So you give it to them. So that's a quick reference. When it's more of an interview, it's more you're giving them multiple options. So they're starting to talk about financial difficulties, they are having difficulties with wins, so you're wanting to talk to them about different options and multiple things. So that's kind of the difference there. Obviously there's a clinic, and we've got the immigration clinic running once a month, which is going well. Other is some random things that we just don't know what to do and where to put it. So we had, like, for example, we had a client that wanted a space to have a court on Zoom, and so we gave them the room, and so yeah. So we explain the interview here. So it might be that client presents with concerns about their neighbour who's just grown built a fence, and what can they do? We've got another couple of things here that we can put. Obviously we're accredited completion location for census this year, so we've got extra volunteers on each shift for the next couple of weeks, helping people either on paper or online doing census forms, so that's really great. So if it's a census inquiry, we can fill it here, and if we click yes, we can then record that feedback, and then it'll go back to Statistics New Zealand and give them feedback on issues, so when they design it for in the next 5 years, they've got that feedback and data, which is great. Obviously topical things, so obviously they did the big digital exclusion campaign, and also flooding is obviously pretty topical at the moment, so if any inquiry is to do with that, gets sent there. This is the bit where we tick all the boxes for different categories, so that's how we find where they are. So if it is housing and land, then down the bottom here we might put in fencing, and then this is how we find that it was a fencing issue. Then we obviously write up what information we discussed with the client. So did we give them options on paper? Did we give them some resources? Did we refer them to another agency? Did we help them fill out a form? Did we help them look for it online? So just all the different information that we gave to them. And then we put here the sources of information. So obviously you can see some of the things I've been recently looking up. So we just can easily add that in because we've been looking up online about those things. Obviously parenting's got nothing to do with building a fence. And then we can attach files. We can also record the details of the client, and this is a safe space. It doesn't get added to any of the other areas when we're pulling out that data, so it can't relate to a person to an inquiry. And then we collect all the demographic details, how they came to us, method of contact, where they live, all that sort of stuff. Language, obviously we've got great language support internally. We've also got the Language Connect we can approach, but also we can approach in-house volunteers that speak different languages, which is incredible service. How they found out about us. Once I'm happy with that, I might get the volunteer next to me to read it over, and they might be like, oh, remember you suggested they went to Comcare Trust. Oh yeah, that's right, I'll put that down. They submit it, and then we have a peer reviewer, which is another one of our volunteers, and they will check through all of that. They'll look and see if the inquiry is, if they would have done the same thing. They look through and see if there's other things they could have suggested, and then that becomes part of the database that every other volunteer can look at and see, oh, okay, there's other resources there, I could have seen those, and it keeps improving the skill set of everybody, which is really cool. The other thing it does is it gives such a good pile of information that now that we've been going over 2 years, we can actually search that and put in, separation or, court order or family harm, and we can search that in, and our volunteers don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. They can just work on that data.
Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, hopefully that was interesting.
That was a very, very complete and interesting presentation. Thank you. Any urgent questions for Sarah? We are running 5 minutes behind.
Oh, sorry.
That's
No, you're right.
No, you're fine. Just a comment, I'd like to thank you, but especially your volunteers, because what this community gets for the money it puts into this is a huge outcome. So on our behalf and on behalf of the ratepayers, can you thank your volunteers very much for us? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Sarah. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, now we've got Jan Cochrane from Sport Canterbury. Come on up, Jan. Thank you for coming in this morning, and you have somebody with you?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have Sean Campbell, our regional lead from Timaru. Sean has been with me. I did put the name forward, but this is not his first time to Ashburton District Council reporting.
Welcome, Sean.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, ko Sean Campbell takunga no Te Tiamaru ahau. Ko te whare ha kenekena o te waitaha e mahi ana no reira tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Sean, I'm the regional manager based in Timaru, but really pleased to be here with Jan today, and thank you for the welcome.
Thank you. Well, floor's yours, Jan.
Thank you. You have the report in front of you. The first page is pretty generic, but that's to introduce the newly councillors to the table to have a background on what the trust does. So for some of you, you've read it a few times, but that was really based for new councillors to be aware. We do have a slideshow presentation. So I think it's probably, we just took a little bit out of the report to present today, and then we obviously will have questions at the end, but if there's anything that you need to discuss going through, or we can go anything from the report that you've read, we can do that at the end. Yeah.
Cool. So I guess sort of a reflection of where we are and where we've been, and like numerous, I guess, community organisations the last few years have been really, really hard. And I guess through sport there was always that sort of gut feeling to try and get back to the old way, get back to how it used to be. It used to be good, but we're trying to sort of park that and use the current format as an opportunity to look at ways of being better and different. So how we can attack, I guess, sport and physical activity opportunities in that way that better meets the needs of our local people. So at the moment, there's a number of organisations in the recovery phase, and we're calling it the Strength and Adapt. So there's Strength and Adapt funding for organisations, and normally that's aimed at a national level with the opportunity to filter down either programs or financial support to run new initiatives that help in the recovery process. But what we're looking at is how we're making it better rather than just recovery. So part of that is obviously what Sport Canterbury is about, and I guess in the simplest way our vision sort of sums it all up, and it's around getting more people more active more often. And then from there we've worked really hard over the last few years to try and align our strategy to reflect that, and we've got sort of 3 or 4 main objectives there, but I think the really pleasing bit is that it tends to align really well with Sport New Zealand, with what our local partners want, our local funders, and most importantly our community members, and there is a strong belief that, and you'll see by reading those, that if we can get young people with, I guess, a habit and a love of being physically active, that hopefully that will set them up for life and being continuously involved. So a lot of time spent on that 5-year-old to 18-year-old space, and then supporting those adults there who have become inactive, and then obviously a focus on our priority populations. That's our real main focus.
So Sport Canterbury Mid here in Ashburton, we had the opportunity to work with Council with their Play, Active, Recreation and Sport strategy. Within the plan, there are action plans that Sport Canterbury actually lead in those objectives, working closely with obviously our community and those other partners that are there. Te Manawa funding, the improvement of rangatahi participation, and I'll talk about one of those projects a wee bit later. Definitely lots of interest with combined funding opportunities and benefits, and working especially with sports clubs. There has been an increase there. Obviously they are struggling in some areas as well. We do really encourage community groups to access any funding that they can, and especially in our coaching and development area, which there is a big lack of coaching areas here, that sports are struggling to find coaches, but it's also quality coaches and bringing them up to the capability to lead good coaching, especially for our young people. The opportunities to provide the pop-up play, that was a huge success from the last year's Te Manawa funding. That was actually a successful application by YMCA, Mid and South Community. They are still coming into the region, but because of the high number of participants, then they have now extended to Mayfield and Hinds. And that has become really popular, but because of their resources, that's limited. So they do Hinds 1 week and Mayfield the next. That has increased participation, and I guess in a rural area, that's been a huge step, because we always thought that children left school on the buses, but actually people are staying and their parents coming in to pick them up after the pop-up play. So that's been a very popular process and project that has gone forward and has been again supported by Te Manawa funding that Sport Canterbury administer and observe that funding. The balance is better philosophy, we're still driving that out. we do see a change, but there are still a lot of challenges in the belief of what that actually means. We'll talk about that just a wee bit later in the presentation, and obviously where we can, we'll increase media coverage. Sat down with your sport and recreation manager recently, and we went through what we were leading, and we're definitely way ahead of tracking, which is really fantastic from both sides, for Ashburton District Council strategy and for us, and definitely supporting in further actions to ensure that that strategy is really a working document and we are fulfilling our obligations. Other areas is just trying to support and collaborate with other groups that are part of that strategy and their action plans. And again, it's probably wider than what we actually feel it was going to be, especially with sports, and there's two major ones at the moment that we're working very heavily with in supporting what direction they're going to be going in. Play, we've created the Play Champions, and we really advocate that more. One of our biggest ones was with Ashburton District Council EA Network Centre, and they were successful in their funding for to get a play pod, and they received that funding through Te Manawa, and what there's seen is a huge change in behaviour on the sideline when schools are coming in, doing their swimming lessons. You may remember previously that if you weren't swimming, you had to sit on the sideline. That created a few issues. We now have them all in there, just go in there and explore, play, throw the gear out, and that has been highly successful for everyone, EA Networks, for schools in particular, and then obviously there's a changeover. So they have also accepted that play pods, and we were very successful in some of our perhaps high deprivation areas to receive play pods into their schooling and community areas as well. Hand back to Sean.
Cool. So another part is around our, I guess, active recreation, which would, probably a few years ago we would say that it was quite new, still probably an evolving space, but essentially it's really anything outside of structured sport. So I guess the structured seasons, the lengths, the formalities, the costs are becoming a barrier to those young teenage people. So it's really around us finding ways to engage them in anything, and just encouraging any type of physical activity has been really positive. We have recently done a survey that's administered by Sport New Zealand, and then we support it through just really specifically on Ashburton College. So we've got some findings in that we're working through with them. So we're going to do a pilot project with them, putting those insights into action, because one of the big bits of feedback we're getting from young people is around making sure that while they're happy to do the survey and they're getting asked a lot, they want to see some change. So the next step is for us to make that happen, and we're just working through with the college now and what that looks like. Jan talked very briefly about balance is better, and it's probably something that you've heard a lot about, with possibly not knowing exactly what's going on. I think probably at the start of a campaign, everyone sort of goes to the view that, it's just trying to take away winning and we're not keeping score, and that's not what it is at all. It's really around challenging sort of four myths that we've got up on the wall there, and those are like, I guess our belief in and the science behind it is that early specialisation isn't actually good for development. We want our students and our young people to play multiple sports across multiple seasons. It's really about developing themselves as a whole person, rather than just focusing on one activity and spending their time doing that. Probably in regions like my own in South Canterbury and here in Mid Canterbury, we're actually really lucky at that, because we actually need the students to play multiple sports to make things work. So they tend to do that, which is really, really cool, and we've got supportive families that can make that happen, and everything's a little bit more accessible. Challenging around, I guess, that specialisation is just because you're good at 10 or 12 doesn't mean that you're going to be an Olympic champion, and likewise, just because you're not good at 10 or 12 doesn't mean that you should stop doing something that you love because you didn't get selected in a team or something. It's just, you might not have grown yet, or you might not have been exposed to that real hot, top quality coaching, but just everyone grows at their own speeds. And then it's not all about just training harder and harder, it's around just having that balance. And I think that's the part where we talk about good coaching, and it's around them understanding that we want athlete development, not about performance. And I think the biggest example or best example I can give around that is that it doesn't really matter if your 10-year-olds win the game, but it's about them all having the same amount of time, and that all 10 of those 10-year-olds come back and play the next year, because that's success in our eyes as far as development goes.
One of the other action points in your strategy was to continue with our sports forums, which Mid-Canterbury are very proud to have run for a number of years and have always been very successful and always well attended. So we do have another one planned for March 16th, which is going to be a breakfast and, well, when I say breakfast, tea, coffee and a croissant, so spending your money in the wrong way. But it is the time we feel that we have to, well, we've had the successes because of breakfast, because the people we asked come to that, CEs or person in charge of sport, or those presidents or treasurers that feel as though they can. And of course, they're the ones that are busy during the day and in the evening, so they are continuing. And we are really working hard with our coach developer group to ensure that we can have that capability and quality of delivery of sport. So that's one that we will lead again, but hope to get another 3 in before the end of the year. One of the big issues right now, and will be based on the next one, is our current sideline management of sport, and Mid-Canterbury does not escape that at all. So following concerns last year, we are working very hard to just work out what is the best way to deal with what we are dealing with on the sideline. I spoke about the Rangatahi Youth Development Program here last time briefly. It was still in the initial stages. It is now up and running. We have had 4 sessions, and if I could ask you all to come, and I know Sarah was fantastic in attending the first one, but we have seen a really growth there, and they are the youth that I can tell you, we had youth that came that perhaps would never have had that opportunity before. They are continuing to come, and it has been a really positive program that we in Mid-Canterbury can be very proud of what we're doing. So we have another 2 sessions left, and then students, those people will have the ability to apply and to have another 2 years of ongoing one-on-one and support through some funding that has been led by the Te Tata Whatu Watahi group in Christchurch. So a very exciting program. Healthy active learning. Behind me, we have just appointed Kayla Cunningham, who, this is her second visit here, but she is actually an ex-Ashburton girl. Some of you may remember her as Kayla Frew. So she has come on board and now working with our facilitator and myself in the Healthy Active Learning. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to keep going? Okay. That was an initial 4-year project with our schools. We currently have 10 schools. We are hoping that in time we can increase that. It was originally based on decile numbers, but we know now deciles are not really out there because all schools have the opportunity to have every ethnic group, ethnicity group in the school. So we've had a major success from our first year. And that is why we've been able to bring in a connector's role to now connect more communities into that school, especially for after school or preschool. In some cases, schools are requesting to keep that connection and provide more physical activity or what is required and the needs of that school, and bringing that community, school community environment with it. And that does bring in people like our pop-up communities or any outside group. Do you want to add to that, Sean?
Yeah, I guess that was always part of the plan, and that the this initiative's rolled out across the country. And so the facilitator part, which is sort of stage one of that, is around really educating and enhancing the capability of teachers in the way they deliver PE within primary schools. It's all about that vision I talked about and growing that love of physical activity. And then the second phase, which Kayla is going to lead with partnership with Jan here in Mid-Canterbury, is around everything outside the curriculum. So how are we getting kids more active sort of outside 9 to 3 or even at lunchtime? So that's essentially how it'll work, and ideally it's still got a couple of years of that phase to run, and then more schools can come on board.
And so to the next 6 months, which is actually until July, we have a lot going. Mid-Canterbury Sports Awards to be held on the 12th of May. Establishing the connector roles we've just spoken about. Working with Ashburton Roan and Mid-Canterbury Hockey on their planning and capability. They have had changes and really want succession plans built, so that does take time, and it is working and trying currently, the last meeting was Monday night, to bring in the groups that actually involved, like in rowing. We're trying to connect with the Lake Trust, Aquatic Trust, Ashburton College, obviously, and obviously Ashburton Rowing, bringing them together and forming some form of group to ensure that everyone does actually understand what rowing is about. I know that sounds, probably we all know, but it's not as easy as that for some of these groups. Talked about the sports forum, coaching development, the Rangatahi, the first stage completion. We will be leading that project with Ashburton College and from the Voice of the Rangatahi feedback. And we have a major, with our HOW schools, Healthy Active Learning Schools, an expo coming up at the end of March, which we are using the EA Network Centre for, and making it a community. There have been concerns by some of our staff, especially 2 schools, are starting to see malnutrition and inactive very young people. So we are having that run and inviting the community to it, but ensuring that all schools involved have that opportunity to be involved. And we have Kai for Kids. Joe Taylor has also come on board. Physical activity training is to be held early March. We've gone through that before, and it's been a successful program for a number of years, I think 12 here in Mid-Canterbury. That is continuing and has been a really strong program that we see as still beneficial, as do the schools, and promoting. And of course we have now gone through the time when we've seen some of those children that were physical activity leaders can become leaders of their high schools, and that's just not locally. That means high schools out of the district. And we obviously are managing the Mid-Canterbury to Manawa projects from here. So, questions?
Well, we have a few, Jan. Councillor Brahm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen, what is sideline management?
Sideline management is
stopping the swearing from the parents, or that's what?
Swearing, abuse in any form. We have had physical contact with a parent, well, not just one, physical contacts onto a referee, physical abuse between coaches, people going onto the field during a game, or it probably gives it away a wee bit, but we have had obviously sideline management with other sports that are on courts. So there is a huge issue out there.
So how do you try to stop that?
There have been many ways, people, but currently Sport New Zealand are working on ideas and practices. A few years ago we put out, sports were able to put out signs and saying, don't abuse the umpire, but of course people don't always read those now. They've become a wee bit. I remember Christchurch 3 years ago, they made the 2 league parents on either side put on bibs so we knew who they belonged to. That did quieten down. So we are waiting for direction of what is going to happen. I was twice last year asked to attend 2 matches, which I did, and I even felt vulnerable. In fact, the second time I didn't take the work car. I actually went in the family car because I felt quite vulnerable by it.
Can I just add, I think, in that while we're waiting for a bit of leadership on that, I think it's a real community response, I think, around, like we've got work to do around, I guess, coach education and how they can influence the way their parents behave in that space or spectators behave. But likewise, you know, and it's a really difficult thing to do. We all know what's right or wrong, and for some reason we don't behave the same way we do on the sideline compared to when we walk down the street. But it does take a little bit of courage to call some of that out and to you know, to front up and say that's not acceptable. Different codes are trying different things at the same time. Rugby for a long time have had match day managers and things who are pretty obviously there and are looking after a few of those games to try and have that out. Oddly enough, through the COVID restrictions and not having spectators around the courts, we had more umpires and referees enjoying their experience. So there is some saying in that moving some of the spectators back just helps as well. So there'll probably be a few things tried throughout 2023 and 2024.
Thank you.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Yeah, my line was along the same as what Lane just asked, and I know, Jen, you've sort of reported that back to our Safe Communities programs, but some of the, like the expo, etc., is that a way of sort of highlighting that we have a bit of a sideline management issue? Like, can you bring that into some of the expos or some of the...
Yeah, absolutely. We have talked about that area, just how we do that and if there is direction that we can use that. But as we are leading it, Sport Canterbury with the House team, that is something we can talk about and even have those signs out, and might be just one of us standing there and drawing the attention. But we will be having a community, I guess, forum, and we will run it in the evenings when it is released, and we will be talking to as many sports groups as we can, but there will be a community forum. Often, though, you get the ones that don't know, that the ones we want there often don't attend.
Yeah, thank you. And just quickly, you said you've got a couple more sessions of that sport development program, and you've got the Active Tamariki Expo, and you said come along. If we don't know about it, we can't. So if you send us through the dates, etc., then that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good point. Hamish,
just a couple of points, Jan and Sean. I remember from a former life that issues around the sideline, one of the things to keep in mind for everyone is that actually the kids hate it. The kids hate the noisy parents. They want to be supported, but they want to be supported kind of in a understated, passive way. And parents yelling support, whether it becomes abusive or it's just passionate over-the-top support, is actually embarrassing to kids, and indeed it can drive them out of the game. So there's a fine balance. I remember with our own daughters playing netball, there was a wonderful initiative of the netball community. I don't know who these ladies were, but they're ambassadors for the sport, whatever they were, on the sidelines at Hagley Park, simply walking around and slapping a label on if they saw that you were actively supporting in a positive way. So they're trying to reinforce the active behaviour rather than trying to confront some, passionate parent screaming abuse at either the referee or their own child, which can be quite a confronting and intimidating environment. So trying to reinforce what good looks like needs to be part of that strategy as well. My question, though, relates to the healthy active learning, and earlier this morning we talked about attendance at school and the kind of post-COVID disease of attendance being a lot poorer than it was before COVID. And the Mayor and I have had some meetings with the Ministry of Education around some of those issues, and we learnt of some initiatives in Christchurch around trying to use before and after school time, so not lunchtime, because if the kids aren't at school, they're not benefiting from anything you do at lunchtime, but having activities. And in the case we heard, it was more culturally based activity, but sport could be a big part of that. That if you can provide an activity that the kids might love before or after school, it actually encourages them to go to school. And so that there's this spin-off benefit, not only for having an active, healthy life, but actually simply attending school. So there seems to me to be a really strong partnership between that program and some of the other issues we're hearing about this morning around attendance at high school, particularly for teens, perhaps at secondary school age. So good on you, some good stuff in there.
That is the connector's role, is to do exactly that.
Yeah.
And it probably is based from Christchurch, but the connector's role is about providing activity during the outer curriculum hours, and hopefully that will bring them to the school. Because if you go around some schools, there are children there very early in the morning, and they're hanging around the gates, and the schools are not officially open till 8:30.
And it was that I think it was the preschool time in particular that a school in Christchurch was delivering some cultural learning or crafting opportunities, carving opportunities, weaving and te reo lessons, whatever the specifics were. Preschool was actually of immense value at keeping the kids motivated to come to school at all. So important stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Madam
Thanks,
Chair.
Hamish. Lynette, you're up next.
Just standing around some of the rugby games with the grandkids, and that a comment often comes out of that about a referee shouldn't be refereeing his own team playing, and I think there's a lot of conflict there. They should be coming out of the area. That I often heard that amongst conflicts, but I was just going to ask about the water sports. We have a great facility down at Lake Hood. Is there work going on there to try and get kids involved with activities here? Because I know there's a sailing club there and they're struggling for numbers, and whether work and people are volunteering with the sailing yachts, and it would be great to see more local kids down there supporting them. And they struggle week on week.
First of all, to your referee, there is one grade where the referee is a parent or coach on either side. So they have two. So that is for the lower grades. And in some areas too, those referees might be the only ones that come forward, and it might be the parent of that child. So we can't control that. We know exactly what they're saying, but often, and parents become very biased. So if their child is pulled up for something, that's not right. But that's where that referee and coach, and that happens in a lot of sports. At lower level, they are a parent or the selected coach, where they're actually out there to not only referee, but they can coach some of those to say, run left, there's a space there or something. So some of those issues come from sideline, again, parents not understanding why they're out there and why the parents are saying. And if they actually listened, it might be that referee is actually giving direction to both teams. So there is that opportunity. You pass the ball out rather than one person who thinks they're really dynamic and do sprint up the sideline every time to score the goal, and the rest of the team are there. So they might be saying, can you pass the ball around a bit? So it is still a wee bit of a misunderstanding there as well. As far as the lake, your own EA Network Centre staff are currently working on a safety program to be held at the lake for schools, and that is in its initial stages. I just spoke with Richard yesterday and finding out exactly a wee bit more about that. So they are working there, and I guess I myself don't know of any other. I do know about the sailing. It used to be on a Sunday morning, which again, unless you have somebody to take you out there, some children just haven't got the opportunity to go out there and do that.
Yeah, I might just add, there might be some opportunity though. I think one of the things we're trying to do, and I talked about it briefly with Ashburton College, is that we're really trying to utilise the student voice and what schools want to do. So I think, with the connectors and the facilitators working really closely with the local schools, if that is a theme that comes through, because I know in Timaru, likewise, access to water and a yacht club, I wouldn't have picked it probably in a million years that a previous Decile 1 school they actually want to have a go at yachting. So we had a Tumatua project, and that school's gone down as an extension to the water safety program, similar to EA Networks, and they've finished off by doing 2 days of yachting on our harbour. So I think there is opportunities, but probably the process we work through is from hearing from the children. But there's nothing to stop us, I guess, encouraging those groups on the lake to provide a have a go opportunity or something for the community if there's value there, if that's what they're struggling for.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And I totally agree, keeping our young kids fit and active is fantastic. Mid-Canterbury also has an ageing population, and I was just wondering what programs there are to keep some of us who are ageing out there fit and active. And I know green prescription's gone now, and that used to fill part of that role. So I was just wondering what programs you have that are for our ageing population.
You can talk about the prescription. I'll talk about, first of all, and then Sean can add, because I'll probably miss something here that's been pretty upsetting, because we are working, I guess my phone goes often, what's happening? And I can't, there's just nothing here. But we do have a lot of good strength and balance classes, that's for all age groups. 24 classes accredited, and that is still continuing. We still have that service here. We have a girl called Lily who is outstanding and delivering down here. We know that the classes in the facility, EA Networks, do cater for all age groups, and there's some good ones there. But I think you're right, there is now a gap for those rehabbing, needing to have physical activity as part of their daily life, and they do need guidance. We were very proud of what we had here in the whole of the country. I have spoken with Richard. I have spoken with other people in the health sector, because they're also questioning that. How can we build a business to keep something like that going here? Because we don't see it coming to Mid-Canterbury for a very long time again. And remembering that probably 85% was getting the 89, we were putting them through the EA Network Centre, so there is a flow-on effect. It's something that if I won lotto tomorrow, I would build a business on myself, because I just saw the value in it, and how that has happened is pretty sensitive to a lot of people in this community, because it was a very, very successful program. We had some very successful people that ran that program, and of course we have to be sensitive to them. They lost their jobs. So it is going to be progress, but it is something that we haven't let lie. Working hard to see how we can do it. It's really funding one person in the long run to keep a service going, but it'll have to be reinvented for Mid-Canterbury. Or maybe South, but we're just worried about ourselves, but they actually still have it because they're under a different health board. That's why I hesitated at the start. But for us, for Mid-Canterbury, it would be really great to see something come together that we can build and continue that program going forward. Because I know, Councillor Ellis, you looked at me when we were ageing. I saw that look, but you're right, it is us that is going to miss out. It is, and I've seen the benefits of everyone. Yeah, Sean, do you want to?
Yeah, no, not really much to add. Really, I think you're right. Probably that 30 to 60-year-old age group is missing some opportunities, and that's a challenge for us. But the strength and balance opportunities, again, a national initiative through ACC. Those 24 classes that you have here are really good and well supported, and they don't get accreditation. I wouldn't say they don't get it easily, but they're well known to GPs, and that's providing a really good service. So you can take a bit of security in that when you enter into them.
Thank you. We have two more questions, and then we're going to finish. Tony, you've got a quick question for Jan and Sean.
Jan?
Councillor Todd.
You might have answered. The green prescription, was that what you were talking about, was it, or not?
Yeah, green prescription.
Yeah.
So the green prescription, as you may remember, excise referral through referrals from medical people. That was, Sport Canterbury held it for 26 years, and last year it was taken away from Sport Canterbury and given to other groups.
Given to, sorry?
To other groups.
Okay.
The funding, so it now does not exist in Mid-Canterbury.
So not at all in Mid-Canterbury? Okay.
No. Okay, thank you, Tony. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, guys. I wanted to step back, age group and the drop-off in youth sport. How's the buy-in with the likes of Mid-Canterbury cricket? I know netball's pretty strong, rugby, etc., you know, to combat that big drop-off for the youth? where the clubs are strong. You know, I think back to the 80s and think of Wellington Rugby, for example, not having a senior side when they were winning Waters Cups, and I think, how did that happen? And so I just wanted to know how about the relationship with you guys and them, and how that is, and what's going on.
Our relationship with all sports is very positive. But again, all sports are having very similar issues. But we also have to remember there are a lot of people out there that are actually not playing structured sport. They like to be part of cycling on the weekend with families. We have Lakewood out there. They could be out there boating. There's lots of reasons why they're not. But a major one is about the availability for some people. And there are financial barriers. There are transport barriers. But we, as a sports trust, we're very close working relationship with all sports. Cricket is a concern here, and Canterbury Cricket, I've spoken with their chairperson up there. They are trying to address that at the moment. But again, it's about some sports, as we talked about right at the start, taking opportunities to actually change this and adapt their sport. A lot of people haven't got time to play all-day cricket anymore. Mm-hmm. In your day, people did, but that's not the same anymore. Life has changed, society's changed, and some sports are changing with it, and they'll be the ones that will go forward. So, yeah, and answer your question, relationships are positive. We just have to work with them to see if we can adapt and work with them to ensure that we keep getting those registrations in. I mean, look at netball, they went ahead, but why'd they go ahead? Because we have a great facility, and they're not out there in my day playing on ice at 8 o'clock in the morning, as you would call it, you know, and so of course it's going to increase. There's no cancellation games, you know you're going to go there, this is your training, then you go and play, you know exactly when that timing is. And that's a big area for some people today too.
Yeah, like you say, they've adapted as well with social netball and what have you, new initiatives, so that's what it's all about.
And walking netball, no limits netball.
Yeah.
All are very popular. So it's about sports adapting and adjusting and listening to people's needs.
Yeah, and I think overall most of sports are pretty open-minded that they need to do that. No one's sort of digging their toes in and saying we're still right. You know, everyone knows it needs to evolve, and I think, yeah, it's just happening at different speeds.
Hopefully they're all tuned in on Facebook now and listening, eh?
Thank you, Jean, and thank you, Sean. That was a really great update and great presentation, and a good look at what you're planning ongoing. Cool. Appreciate you coming in today, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon, I hope.
Thank you.
I understand you want to you're sitting here, Neil? Oh, I don't know, you just want... Oh, yeah, I need to declare them. Beg your pardon, everybody. I'd like to now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.